Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Reclamation Hour podcast. It has been, a month or so since we managed to get an episode uploaded to you all. And that is because I have been quite sick, unfortunately. But we are back now. We have finally started recording. And today's episode is actually one that we recorded a few weeks ago, and I didn't manage to get posted. So today we're going to be talking about, the fall of, for lack of a better term, false gurus in the spiritual space, and how we are seeing veils already begin to drop around some of these spiritual teachers and gurus and coaches and all of the things. And I mentioned today's date when I post this, which is November 21st, 2025, because a lot of this has actually come up on social media in the last week or so. And we recorded this almost 3 weeks back now. So while this topic, this astrological transition of Neptune moving from Pisces and into Aries is never more relevant than right now, as we're seeing play out on social media, we recorded this a few weeks back. So you won't hear us reference the more current events, but it's still just as applicable as anything. So let's get into it. Let's talk about false light, false gurus, how spirit manipulation plays into that, and how Neptune moving into Aries is really bringing all of this to light. Today, we are going to talk about I still don't know exactly how to phrase this, right? But this problem we see with sort of, we want to call them false gurus, false prophets.
Mm-hmm.
Neptune, right? I'm not the astrologer. Let Alexander talk in a moment. But Neptune is moving into Aries in January.
Yep.
And it moved into Aries for a minute in the summer. And everybody's been talking about this transit and how it's going to basically dissolve the veils on false teachings and spiritual leaders who are either not in it for the right reasons or not embodied or have, I would even say, just been tricked by false light. And so this is where you can go listen to our last few episodes where we've talked about vampiric spirits and other spirits and what a goetic infernal is. We've talked about all that stuff in the last few episodes. And so while we will not be using spirits as a excuse for people doing harmful shit, it does add some layers of understanding as to why some of this happens. So anyway, Neptune is this transit of Neptune is something I've been hearing about for at least a couple years, right? That we're going to move into this transit, and this is what we're going to see happening in the spiritual and the coaching spaces. So we thought today we would talk about some of these false light teachers, even some of this culty type of behavior that we see, because I do think that this falls into a couple categories of people who are literally just in it to deceive and be bad. And then we also have people who I think believe that they're doing good and are inadvertently being harmful due to all the things we talk about on this podcast, internalized colonization and all these various things. So what do you want to say about Neptune or anything before we get started? Because this is going to last for a while, right? It's not going to be 3 months
14
of Neptune
years.
in Aries. Okay.
Yeah,
So
no, it's
a
going to be
while.
14 years. So basically what's happening is that Neptune occupying a sign lasts 14 years. So every 14 years, around 14 years, Neptune switches signs. And so Neptune, essentially what it's doing is it's a generational planet. So you can see that the Neptune transits play out in the collective in a much more palpable way. And so, Neptune has a cycle of 168 years, but every 14 years it switches signs. And what's happening is that essentially it's resetting its cycle once, come January. I think it's January 26, 2026. So definitely early in the year, we're going to kind of start with Neptune ingressing Aries. And so this is the sign of realism. It's the sign of confrontation.
What does Neptune do? What is he about? Do we masculinize Neptune?
We can. I mean, he's named after Poseidon, right? The god of the ocean. So yeah, we could. Certainly.
My internet says that Neptune represents spirituality, intuition, dreams, illusion, and the dissolution of boundaries.
Yes, that's correct, as well as escapism,
Mm.
dissociation. It's this spiritual fog that Neptune tends to bring. Um,
So it's been in Pisces. So what does that mean when
yeah.
Neptune sits in Pisces?
So when Neptune sits in Pisces, and this is actually when it first ingressed Pisces, I think it was 2011, that's when we start to see all of a sudden everyone overnight becomes a witch. Everyone overnight becomes this spiritual guru. That's when we start to really see the spiritual
Mhm.
community all of a sudden in the New Age movement kick in. So really Neptune in Pisces was, you can call it a mass spiritual awakening or a mass spiritual yearning, but also a mass confusion, right?
Well, because
Um,
Pisces is more, it's like well, it's a water sign,
Yeah, it's a water
right?
sign. Mhm.
And it's, isn't it? I don't know how to say this because, like, first of all, I don't know a lot about astrology, and also I
Yeah.
never want to make it sound like Pisces, like anything is a bad thing. But isn't it one
Right.
of the more like
Yes.
dreamier?
Very
Um,
ethereal, very it's kind of the challenge with Pisces is to ground, right? Because it is transcendence.
yeah,
And so sometimes, to the point of detriment, what I'm thinking right now is like, for example, Kurt Cobain, who had a lot of Piscean placements, absolute raw genius musician. However, you can see, the drug abuse and the substance abuse was um kind of like how Pisces plays out when unaware. It's dissociation, really.
mhm,
And that's what we see in the spiritual community. That's what we've
yeah.
seen since 2011
I was
to
gonna say, so
2025.
Neptune sitting in Pisces was kind of
Mhm.
amplifying that very dreamy,
Yeah.
spiritual feeling,
Mhm.
which can be super solid,
Mhm. Yeah.
but also really like if Neptune ruled, what did it say? Illusion? Was that what? Yeah,
Yes,
illusion.
illusion. Mhm.
So intuition, dreams, and illusion, right? So
Mhm.
if
Exactly.
it's amplifying all of that stuff, and at the same time, you take into consideration that now we have a lot of people, and I'm just gonna say, especially white people, again, in a white body myself, going through awakenings without roots to ancestors, roots to land,
Right.
roots to tradition. It would be very easy to
Mhm.
slip into
Mhm.
the more love and light type of spirituality. We have a whole podcast episode on
Yeah.
that, so you can go listen to
And that's
that.
really that's
So
really
it does,
when
yeah, it makes sense.
when we see the rise of love and light. It happened really upon Neptune's ingress into
Hmm.
Pisces, which is, that's its home sign, that's its place of domicile. So of course these
Okay.
qualities are going to be, even more amped up or more
Right.
amplified.
And I can see the
Um
benefits where that would be a
yeah.
strength to become
Mhm.
more spiritual and intuitive and all that. But again, if you don't have something to really ground you during that,
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There's, when we're not conscious, especially when it comes to like Piscean energy or Neptunian energy, there's definitely some spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
It is the sign of spirit, right? So there's like spiritual bypassing, mesh that with like the dissociation, the ethereal, dreamy,
Hmm.
delulu, daydreaming, all that.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm talking so much shit about Pisces energy, but I
No,
promise, like with my Pisces moon, I promise you, like, this is not, again, we're just talking about the age of like the collective unconscious.
I can see the strengths of
Yeah.
Neptune sitting in
Yeah.
Pisces. I just
Hmm.
can also see that shadow side that we've witnessed
Yeah.
rise.
Yeah.
Now Neptune is moving into Aries,
Hmm. Hmm.
different energy.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and
what does
actually
that look
that
like?
so Neptune and Pisces is like this like savior complex, right? Where all of a sudden like there's this spiritual guru, there's this idealization of a certain thing, and then Neptune hits Aries, and even like throughout history, art changes to a more
Aries, hold on,
realism
that's a fire sign?
that is fire, and that
Okay,
has to
so I was
do
thinking
with
air, but that's because it says Aries. So yeah,
yeah, Aries is fire.
yeah.
It is the first sign of the zodiac. It
Okay.
is very it's like the incarnation of spirit again, right? Because spirit is ruled by Pisces, and then you reincarnate. That's going to be like it sets the entire cycle, like it's
Okay.
Aries now. So this is like the I am, this is individuation. This is, there's focus
Hmm.
around identity, there's focus around the self, and it's very real, right? Because it's Mars, it's ruled by Mars. So think confrontation, think head on, right? It does rule the head, but it's kind of like facing things head on. There's like no
Hmm.
filter about it. Calling it,
Is
it's
Aries the
really
one with the
raw. It's
goat?
very say?
with the goat
Yes.
horns. Yeah.
Well, we have Capricorn too,
Mm.
but Aries is
Aries
it's
is
the
the
ram.
emperor
Yeah. Yep.
in
Aries
tarot.
is the
Okay.
emperor and the ram. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So um basically this is what we astrologers are, we've had our eye on this transit for several years now,
Hmm.
but this is like essentially when the veil, it's like not just stripping away, it's like ripping away. It doesn't like
Hmm.
fall, it's like it's being ripped away from people. And
Yeah.
so this is kind of like when we start to expose everything that was built on illusion. So we'll see scandals, cults, all of a sudden,
Hmm.
get frontline in the news.
Like what you, okay, that I think that helps it make sense what you just said there about anything that was built on illusion
Mhm. Mhm.
is going to fall
Yeah.
apart. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people's spiritual paths have accidentally been built on a lot of illusion.
Mhm. Yeah. This
So,
it
okay.
really is, cuz Aries is radical. It's like realism. And so this
Hmm.
is this call to radical spiritual realism, and really um it's very real, it's very raw, it's very unfiltered. And so there's this revelation that happens in the
Hmm.
collective, where especially in the spirit, because Neptune rules spirituality.
Right.
Um there's this like collective rude awakening or exposure of deception and things that were
Hmm.
built again on illusions.
Yeah. Okay. And I think also, because you said this earlier, I had never, because again, not an astrologer, that when you said the generational planets or the planets with these much longer
Yes, orbits.
orbits
Mhm.
impact the collective more, like we see it play out in the
Yes.
collective more. I think that's really interesting because a
Mhm.
lot of people, this is just like a side note, but a lot of the people that I see like criticize in quotes astrology, mostly they don't know anything about it. But
Usually.
but it is like, because it's interesting because, right, like when the faster moving planets make a transit, we don't see it necessarily in the collective quite as much. And so I think that
Right.
makes it easier for people to be like, the moon doesn't really impact. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, but you actually can see those outer planets in the collective very
Yeah.
clearly when you look
Yeah.
through history and you chart it
Yeah.
on a timeline. So
It's quite
that's just
tangible.
an, yeah, that's just an interesting
Yeah.
tidbit for anybody who's learning astrology along with me listening to Alexandra. These are my two takeaways astrologically, is
Mhm.
that the Neptune Aries thing, anything built on illusion coming down,
Mhm. Mhm.
illusion does not make for a good foundation. And then the outer planets and the collective.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. So anyway, sorry, my brain wasn't actually like prepared to learn a bunch of astrology stuff just now in the last 10 minutes. So with all of that as like our foundation, like this is why we're seeing all of this happen in the spiritual communities, right? We wanted to talk about
Mhm.
how we are seeing this play out and how just this like whole concept, right, of these various spiritual teachers who end up being really pedestalized and the
Mm.
problems that this can cause and like all of that kind of thing. And like I was saying before, I do think that we see a few different categories. Like I don't have them all written down, so I'm sure that there could be more. But I especially see the difference between people who I really think are just very culty, right? Like they're
Mhm.
trying to control people. They have some very deep personal gain in it. And then people who I think mean really well, but there's been spirit manipulation they're unaware of, or they lacked a significant amount of grounding, or maybe the right mentor, or something like that. And so they
Mhm.
rose very quickly with that Neptune in Pisces
Yeah.
energy to kind of support that. And they've ended up, these are a lot of those like love and light spiritual teachers that we've talked
Mhm.
about, like not by name, but the concept that we've talked about in the podcast
Yeah.
before. And so when you combine that with like, these are people who are probably not doing anti-colonial work or decolonial work.
Right, which also thrives under Neptune and Pisces,
Mm-hmm.
because that's also part of that. It's like this colonial savior archetype, and it's
Mm-hmm.
usually whitewashed. It's usually white-bodied.
Well, yeah, because
Think
it makes
about.
me think of that idea that like the illusion of it all, right? Like if we were
Yeah.
here to transcend humanity and
Mhm.
stay high vibe and kind of look
Mhm.
away from all the suffering, like there's
Yeah.
a kernel of truth in some of those teachings. Like we've talked about this before, right? But
Yeah.
there's like a kernel of truth in that.
Yeah.
And obviously it's also very incomplete and ends up doing a lot
Very.
of
Yeah.
harm. So,
Mhm.
and colonization and racism is something most white people have really been taught is over. It doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah,
And like, I mean, if you're a listener to this podcast, like, that's not true. That's not what happened in the last 30 years. It just became internalized and
Yeah.
normalized.
Yeah, it's so true, especially, with that transit, that Neptune and Pisces. It's like this is when we
Mhm.
start to see a lot of like whitewashed yoga and tantra all of a sudden come
Yeah.
up, like veganism, not to shame veganism if, but a lot of that was built on the premise that you are more enlightened if you have like a raw vegan diet, et cetera, et cetera. And then
I still
also,
see that one all the time.
yeah, and then influencers exploiting indigenous medicines,
Hmm.
basically the spiritual higher, yeah, that's what that is. It's like the spiritual hierarchy replicating this colonial power where the
Hmm.
guru, there's the guru and then there's followers, right? So it's like we're escaping the body. And of course Pisces is sensationalism too, so it's like, oh yeah, like anything to really, that really feels nice and dreamy and good and has this quality. So
Hmm.
colonization has a lot to do. These patterns reemerge during the
Yeah.
Neptune and Pisces era for sure.
Yeah. Because, yeah, I mean, that's just a big illusion, the belief that it
Hmm.
doesn't happen anymore. And
Right, right.
like racism doesn't exist now. And I mean, these are things like I've literally heard white people say in
And
the
we're
last
all
15 years.
one, so like we don't see
Exactly.
color, and
And like I
yeah, but
understand how on some real, like, yes, on some truly ascended level, we are all one. And, and we
and
incarnate
also,
into bodies that separate us out.
hmm,
And like our souls choose specific bodies for specific reasons.
yeah,
And that's not where the world is right now. So pretending that we are doesn't actually help anything.
hmm,
And these are all the
yeah.
systems
If
we've had before.
anything, we're just gaslighting ourselves, right? And
Hmm.
it's really what it is. It's like this addiction, this healthy, like this unhealthy fantasy, or like fantasy healing is what's happening.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's disembodied, right? Because spirit
Hmm.
is disembodied.
Right.
So yeah.
So the interesting thing here is then we see this start to collapse whilst like harm
Hmm.
begins to come to the surface. So like the thing I can think of, and this is a little bit older now, but with the Kundalini yoga in the West, right? And I
Oh.
can't even remember like these gurus' names, but there was the guy who brought it to the US
Hmm.
and sensationalized it. And then there was
Hmm.
like the white woman, and it's always like really began to collapse when
Hmm.
all the sexual assault claims came out, and
Hmm.
then all the cult tactics came out. And there's like actually some pretty good documentaries on this
Yeah.
now that you can watch. And people then had to reckon with the
Mm.
duality of how harmful this has been and the potential benefits that they did in fact see from this practice.
Hmm.
And I think that sitting with that is really uncomfortable for people, and we have to get better at sitting with that sometimes two things can be true at once, right? And
Hmm.
then on the flip side of that, like from my perspective, I see something like that story happen and I'm like,
Hmm.
vampires. Like I see
Yeah.
vampiric spirits all over that
Yeah.
story. And this
Yeah.
is where they the spirits on the other side can really, people who aren't being really grounded, doing their decolonial work, doing their clearing work, people who aren't really being intentional about these kinds of things or just don't have the knowledge even, can really be pressed on by these spirits. And money is just an amplifier. I want people to
Hmm.
understand that when we're talking about this. So somebody can go into something with consciously good intentions, and then
Hmm.
once they start to make money, it amplifies whatever's actually underneath those good
Hmm.
intentions. And we start to see culty behavior, and we start to see harm, and we start to see all of these
Hmm.
things, even from somebody who maybe originally meant well.
Hmm.
And It's just such a problem. Okay, so this summer, Neptune was in Aries for like a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just retrograded back into Pisces for the very last time. Um it's basically wrapping some things up in Pisces,
Mm-hmm.
and we won't see that. We won't see Neptune ingressing Pisces again for another 168 years, and then it'll move back into Aries. But during the summer, when Neptune was occupying Aries for the first time, we started to see a lot of exposés within the spiritual community, right? So we saw an Ashtanga yoga, and I don't remember his name, but I'm sure the community may know. We saw an Ashtanga yoga master have very, very serious sexual abuse allegations, and basically he blamed it on his addictions, that apparently he relapsed and he wasn't sober again, and he had been struggling with that. Again, lack of accountability, lack of real
See, and this
integrity,
is what I
right?
mean is it's like spirit manipulation and
Yeah.
something like that, relapsing into substance abuse. Like these are all
Hmm.
contributing factors, and yes, they can
Yes.
push people one way or the other into harm or not,
Right.
but it doesn't it can give us a reason that this
Hmm.
might have happened without us. We don't have to let people off the hook. So I see
Right.
that even in the shadow workspaces where there's lots of entity work, which is great,
Hmm.
except that all of a sudden everything is an entity. It's like, okay,
Mm.
but just
Mhm.
because there was an entity attachment, like
Yeah.
that trait had to already be in the person.
Yeah. We can't remove accountability. That's just the
Exactly.
bottom
Like
line.
we don't get a free pass. Like nobody
Yeah.
gets a free pass for harm
No.
just because they didn't know that they had vampiric spirits feeding on them. It can
Right.
help us with the empathy and the understanding and the it's almost like that very Christian-y programming where it's like if you forgive, it's like it never happened and then you
Oh,
have to like
right.
let that person back into your life. Where it's like, no, I can forgive you for the harm you've caused and also say I will have
Hmm.
nothing to do with you ever again. And so the
Yeah.
same thing can be true here, where we can say, all right, I do understand the spirits at play and the conditioning at play and the wounding at play and how this happened. And
Hmm.
that does not undo the very real harm that was caused, and you don't get a free pass for it.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
if you can't hold that duality, that's Christian programming that we want to work on.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, that was like one of the bigger scandals, as well as a very viral influencer basically came out on his podcast and talked about how the goddess Isis told him to impregnate two women at the same time. And
Which the
he
main
received a
problem
lot
with
of,
this being that his wife was not on board.
she said she was on board, but we don't know really, right?
Okay.
There was, so,
I have
and
not
listen.
listened to his explanation. I've just seen the discourse around it, and no, I can't think of his name, but I'm sure everybody knows it. You
One
can
of
find
the
it
red
generally.
flags that I saw with that in particular was that there was another so-called expert on that podcast, and he had um, sexual abuse allegations as well, right?
Mm,
So, do you see like where we're going here? It's not really an integrity, and it's removing agency,
mhm.
it's removing authority, right? Your own inner authority. And so anyway, they received a lot of backlash for this, of course. And this isn't to say like you can't have like I think anyone who's listened to the podcast long enough understands like my point of view and my
Right, like, if everybody's truly happy with this and could say, like, we don't
yeah.
have, like, some ethical issue
Yeah.
with
I'm
it.
all for
Right.
ethical non-monogamy if that's, I've worked with couples who are, engaging in ethical
Well,
non-monogamy.
and it's like even most of the stuff we talk about with love and light, like, it's not the concept of a star seed that
Right.
we have a
Right,
problem
right, right.
with or light language or, like, whatever the thing is.
It's the way
It's
it's co-opted
the
and
culture and
yeah.
that stuff, right.
Yeah.
So anyway, right,
Yeah,
so I've
it's
interrupted you,
really,
like, 3 times now.
slimy.
It is slimy.
Yeah, so we saw essentially what my point is here is that when Neptune was in Aries for those few months there, we saw it was basically like a trailer of what to expect
Mhm,
come January 2026 once Neptune takes up Aries permanently for the next 14 years. It's like, okay, it's real. It's about also removing the performative spirituality, right? It's the rise of
mhm.
of realism, it's also reclaiming your own inner individual spiritual
Yes.
agency, because that is what is
Mhm.
missing from the spiritual community, is people being able to listen to their own inner authority, to their
Yes.
own agency, being able to actualize. And it also means accountability. It means that's, if anything, that's Mars, right?
Mhm.
That's Aries. It's accountability. It's like, no, no, no. Like, let's confront this. Let's dig this up. Let's do this, head on. So there's a lot there, definitely, to kind of expect once Neptune occupies Aries. And so what we're saying is, really, this is kind of like when the false love and light, when the false spiritual gurus and influencers and all of that all of a sudden start dropping like flies, because we're it's like the spirituality is no longer an aesthetic. It's not something to be sensationalized. It's something to get
Mhm.
real about, be held accountable for,
Yeah.
in a very tangible way. And kind of like what you
Mhm.
said, isn't Aries, didn't you say earlier, isn't Aries the wow, why am I blanking out right now?
The Emperor?
The Emperor, yeah.
Mhm.
It's like that's what's associated with Aries energy. It's the Emperor, right? And
Yeah.
so very grounded. Um it's this very divine masculine
Mhm.
archetype. So definitely some veils will be completely stripped away. It'll feel kind
Mhm.
of like a rude awakening, especially when it comes to spirituality. And I think this is also when we start to gain a little bit more discernment, because then that's gonna take over, our tendency to just have this blind devotion to people.
Mhm.
um so
Yeah, and that's where, like within the sacred feminine spaces, that is the thing that we all, like most of us talk about, is like finding
mhm.
your own spiritual authority, especially anybody who's like really
Yeah.
working off the Gospel of Mary and working with Magdalene, and kind of that piece of it is this idea of returning to our own spiritual authority. And then at the same time, I see people who preach that, and then then the moment that somebody doesn't agree with them, or somebody in their space, like all of a sudden, then like all this wounding comes up.
Mhm.
And of course there would be wounding. Like, I'm not, like, it's very
And
human to be like,
that's not the
to
issue,
feel the
though.
sting when somebody you're working with is like, I don't like this. I think I'm going to leave. This isn't for me. Like, of course,
Mhm.
obviously. Um, but then we can get really grippy about it, right? And that's where it starts to, you say I'm all about spiritual authority unless you disagree with me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
this is where that guru culture comes in, right? Is that, and I don't even like using that word, because I don't think traditionally that a
Right,
guru
it
would,
wasn't,
would,
yeah.
would do that.
That's
What
the
I'm
other
about to say is like that the way that we see it I'll just say in the West, right? Is
Yeah.
this idea of like your guru knows everything and they need to be pedestalized and you do what they say. And it's like,
Mhm.
this is not that this is very, again, you left the church and you didn't leave the church.
Mhm.
A lot of good churches don't even teach that anymore, that you can't have a relationship with God and that your preacher knows everything. But that's this pedestalization culture where we put our spiritual teachers up on a pedestal.
Mhm.
And those are the only teachers that we give any weight to. But then the moment that they screw up, because they're human and they will,
Mhm.
that we either make excuses for them or we run to the next teacher that we can put on a pedestal. Like, I don't
Mhm.
want to be on anybody's pedestal. I am human. I'm going to make mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's just going to happen. And when my community tells me that, then it's on me now to like repair, change that. But yeah, there's this weird culture about putting people on a pedestal, which is not a sacred feminine way to hold sacred space
Yeah.
in the first
Yeah.
place.
And I think that's one of the bigger contrasts too of Neptune moving into Aries, is this like dissolution of
Mm-hmm.
power, right? This like power dynamic, because people all of a sudden are going to realize they no longer need a middleman to access the divine,
Right.
right? And so we move from like this false guru figure, from this like charismatic cult leader
Mhm.
to, it's like, um because really that's rooted in like colonial frameworks of
Yes.
hierarchy is the thing, right?
Mhm.
Because we need the middleman. And so like in Aries, yes, you're going to see more people, at least people within integrity, decolonize spirituality because it
Mhm.
dismantles also the need for saviors altogether.
Right.
um so
Well, and I think it
yeah, it's
interplays with our, the conditioning we have around wanting like an instant gratification, like we want a quick fix.
yeah, yeah,
And so if there's a spiritual teacher who's promising some kind of quick fix or some kind of like
healing and enlightenment.
that's not the reality
Mhm.
of spiritual enlightenment, for lack of a better word. Like
Mhm.
it you don't need a middleman. You do probably want a mentor of some, like, not
Mhm.
like necessarily. Again, it's about accountability. It's about having somebody keep you grounded. So it doesn't have to be a mentor as in like they know more than you, or it doesn't even have to be somebody you pay, but like community, really helpful.
Mhm.
Connecting to your roots, doing ancestral work, like all of these various things when it comes to like decolonizing
Mhm.
our spiritual traditions. But I think that it really is also wrapped up in this like, if you pay me X amount of dollars, I can guarantee you this result really quickly.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's part of that sensationalism. Yeah. Yeah, that's part of that like spiritual glamour, right? Um
Mhm.
that is kind of like that's like part of the Piscean continuum is like that quick fix,
Yeah.
right? Like that I need something to distract myself with or to dissociate from, right?
Yeah.
Um and so it's because Neptune rules drug addiction and substance abuse,
Hmm.
as well as alcoholism and all these ways of separating from the body from reality. And so really it is about that quick fix of like how can I get it's this spiritual like void, but it's like an addiction. It's showing up as an addiction
Hmm.
for a thing. But that's definitely something that's going to change once we get to January. We're going to start to see direct experience rather than ideology. It's going to
Hmm.
be embodied. It's going to be very much about truth telling. Um, there's no more beating around the bush, or it's
Well, the truth is not always comfortable, I think, and this is what.
yeah, and it's not always glamorous either.
Right.
Which is what we've seen in this like Neptune and Pisces era, which is why these
Hmm.
false teachers have been so abundantly followed. And yeah, this is kind of it's kind of like where spirituality gets real.
Hmm.
um
Well, because
mm,
there's a lot of spiritual teachers who are not really embodied in what they're teaching. Like they haven't
yeah.
actually walked the walk. They don't actually. It's not fully embodied. And of course, if it's not fully embodied, you've built a you haven't built a strong foundation for what you're teaching. And it's the embodiment part of spirituality that is hard. And so when we avoid that piece of it, of course we're leaning into illusion. It's so much easier to just be like, oh, stay high vibe, eat your raw vegan diet, and do your Kundalini Kriyas every day,
Hmm.
than it is to be like, actually, maybe the reason that your life sucks is because of the capitalistic society that we live in and the ways
Yeah.
that you inadvertently play into it.
Speaking of that, part of that is also like the somatic field. That's an issue that I see in the somatic field as well. It's not just spirituality, but like a lot of practitioners who say that they're trauma informed and say that they're healers or whatever,
Hmm.
or even just somatic facilitators, they like to have this emphasis around nervous system regulation, right? It's become such a buzzword now.
I
Um,
know.
but that's part of it too. It's if you are teaching someone nervous system regulation without any political analysis, any demographic, any
Yeah.
racial analysis, what you're essentially doing is you're helping somebody else gaslight their own nervous system
Right.
to living in a really shitty world. Um, that doesn't help anyone but the colonial patriarchy.
Mhm.
So there's we also see this in the somatic industry with people like, it is safe for me to feel in my body. It is, and I've seen, these affirmations, and it works for some, but also not people of color, and not currently, and not queer people, and not trans people, and not, there's a whole list of people that doesn't necessarily work for, because there is a
Mhm.
real threat that's present. And
Right.
so we cannot gaslight ourselves, or try to gaslight our nervous system into thinking that we are safe when we're truly not. Again, that only helps the colonial patriarchy, that only helps the systems of oppression. And in fact,
Mhm.
I don't believe that you can be fully trauma informed if you are not also addressing these systems of harm.
Yeah. If you
It's a
don't
big piece of that.
understand if you don't understand how trauma sits in our bodies epigenetically, and you don't understand how colonization sits in our bodies and in our psyches, I don't think that you can be, and like the list goes on. I also don't think you can be fully trauma informed. Like
Mm-mm.
we were talking before we jumped on here, I just saw another video the other day of like some spiritual retreat, somatic exercise, and these women are having like full body cathartic releases. And like sometimes that's healthy for people, sometimes it's not, right? Like we've talked about this on
Mhm.
the podcast before too, is like staying within your nervous system's window of tolerance. And um but these women are like screaming, some of them are crying, and they're being held down by men.
Yeah.
And I just really think that this is wildly unsafe because, first of all the repressed sexual trauma that sits in a lot of women,
Yeah.
like being like that's
Mhm.
just the reality of it. And even if that hasn't happened to you personally in this lifetime, your body holds that trauma because it's sitting in you
Epigenetics.
epigenetically.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't feel like if these men really understood that,
Mhm. Mhm.
that this is how they would be handling women while
Mhm.
trying to help them with trauma.
Right.
It feels
Right.
like you're gonna rip open things that the psyche might not be ready to deal with. And even on an energetic level, because sometimes they're doing like energy work at the same time,
Mm.
is it's like you can rip open like
Yeah.
like one of the conversations I've seen a lot lately with I think is really great is like with like kundalini activations and stuff. Like kundalini energy is not meant to be activated on your timeline. It is not
Mm-mm.
meant to be ripped open in an event or in a ceremony. It is meant to
With
awaken
100 other people.
on its own timeline when your system is ready for it. A lot of people have a lot of, like, for lack of a better way to say it, just like gunk in their system, in their energy, in their bodies that
Mhm.
needs to be cleared out before you can run that type of energy through your system safely.
Yeah.
But it's that quick fix thing, right? Like
Mhm.
if I just pay the money and I go to the retreat, then I'll have the Kundalini awakening and then I'll be really psychic and then my life will be solved.
Yeah. And it's also that like sensationalism too, right?
Right.
That's a huge part of that. I think, and
Because we don't
it's
want to do boring stuff. We don't want to do stuff everybody's doing. We don't want to do boring stuff. Um,
Mhm.
this is why like I see a lot like people want to work with with the flashy goddesses in quotes. They want to work with the flashy mythology as opposed to like for example like English mythology is so deep and so beautiful. And if you have English heritage along with your decolonial work, you should dig into that mythology.
Mhm.
But for some reason it's not seen as like as cool by a lot of
Because
people.
it's not
It's not
aesthetic.
exotic. What did you just say?
I said it's not, well, yeah, it's not exotic, but it's also not aesthetic.
Right.
And that's part of it too. I think even with the Neptune and Pisces situation, Neptune rules pictures, like media,
Mm-hmm.
photography, things like that. That's when we start to see a lot of Instagram influencers pop up in
Mm-hmm.
2011. That's when that picked up.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, everyone's like, I want my life to be Instagrammable, right?
Right.
Insta ready. Like, especially when it comes to spirituality, it's like, it needs to look this way. I want it to look
Mhm.
this way. I want it to appear this way. And I want to be able
And
to show that.
like if there's an aesthetic that is really authentic to you, super. Like beauty is really important to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that isn't what makes the spirituality.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
just a piece of it for me.
Mhm.
And, you know, like right now it's a lot of like the white aesthetic and the linen and the,
Oh my
um,
god.
which again, like
Kate.
I know some people for whom that's very authentically like what they love and what their brain
Yeah.
loves. Like you can see my office is like this dark green color and there's
Mhm.
like this horse painting with all these colors in it. You know, like there's
That was a that was a huge topic, in the Latino community, well, really the Mexican community because of Dia de los Muertos,
Mhm,
and all of a sudden we start to see all these altars that were so beige, and the irony, right? Because like
mhm.
because that Day of the Dead
I would
is
say isn't it
has
traditionally very colorful?
yes, it's very, very colorful.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it has indigenous roots. Like that's what we're honoring.
Mhm,
And in indigenous teachings, we're told the colors represent certain things,
mhm.
and it's what guides the spirit back home.
So
It's the
what does beige
color. It's
represent?
it represents colonization. Do you think that your
No,
ancestors are going to want to come and visit a colonized fucking altar?
I've seen people talk about this beautifully about like colonization and fashion and
Yeah.
how like monochrome and
Yes.
black and neutral and things was like very in like, you know, various areas of Europe and then
Hmm.
became but it became in
Hmm.
during like colonization in India,
Yep.
colonization in Africa, colonization
Yeah.
where like all of these
We
other
see that.
indigenous peoples are very colorful.
Hmm.
And then, you know,
Hmm.
the Europeans are like, I shall dress all in black. And listen, like I love to like all black, but it's just an
Yeah.
example.
I'm a goth girl at heart. Like
Um,
I will wear black all the time, but
right. And even now, typically, like if you want to dress old money or you want to like look refined, you dress in neutrals
yeah.
and like one
Hmm.
color, which is not inherently bad, except that the lack of color is very rooted in the colonization.
Yes. Yeah. And we see that too. My thing is colonization has no place in especially spiritual practices and
Yeah.
ceremonies that have indigenous roots. Um
Hmm.
Nobody wants to see your beige altars. Like that's just whitewashed. Um and you're 1,000% right, because even in Latin America, like that's like something that's really all of a sudden people stop embracing color, and because we're told that that looks white just looks more elegant. White just
Yeah.
blends with everything. White's just the color of purity
I was just gonna
and
say wedding dresses are white to
yeah,
represent like
right.
virginity, but not in other cultures.
Not in other cultures.
Like I'm just
So
like kind of envisioning like the saris, like the Indian traditional like wedding garb.
yes, yep.
It's beautiful and it's not
Hmm.
traditionally just like all white as
Hmm.
far as I
As far as we've
understand.
seen.
As far as I
Yeah.
understand it. Happy to be again corrected. But
Yeah. So there's that as well.
mhm,
It's like that it's that aesthetic, right?
yeah.
Um
I feel like we got a tad bit off topic, except that
yeah,
it's
we
not
did, didn't
super
we?
off
How do
topic.
I go back?
I mean, it applies, but it also is
Yeah.
it's a little bit over. It was a
Mhm.
little bit of a detour. So illusion, spiritual
But that's
illusion,
yeah, I
and the
was going to say
fall
that.
of
I'm
the
like
false teachers.
that's
But
part of the
it
illusion.
is us pedestalizing teachers who hold a specific aesthetic, and that it
Yeah.
gives them more authority. And I have even noticed this in myself, even recently, when I'm
Mhm.
scrolling through Instagram, that I will unconsciously lend authority to people based
Mhm.
on aesthetics, and usually it leans
Mhm.
into
Mhm.
monochrome, white, and like I'll catch it, and I'll be like, hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-mm.
Mhm.
But like I will catch this even in myself still. This unconscious bias to lend authority to a very specific spiritual aesthetic.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of all a part of it. And this is why we're always talking about doing this work and doing the shadow work and getting to know what that feels like when it happens in your body so you can recognize it. Because it's just the conditioning we've all had our entire
Mhm.
lives. But I think we should talk about false light a little.
Okay.
because I feel like that's a big thing that's going to be crashing down with Neptune going into. I feel like it has to be because it's like one of the biggest illusions that I see in the spiritual
The false
spaces.
light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to figure out how to define false light real quick. Do you have a way you would describe it, or should I figure it out how to describe it?
Fa- okay, so when you say false light, I immediately jump into this like savior hierarchy, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this is the light, this is enlightenment, this is, and it's being outsourced.
Uh-huh.
It's never like up to the individual person. So false light is essentially hijacking someone's agency and spiritual authority.
Definitely does that.
Um,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
I
I think
don't
it's
know that
also
that's like the
this.
definition.
I mean, I don't know if there is a definition,
Let me see if I
but
can.
it definitely does that. For me, it's also this concept of like, well, first of all, it includes this concept that light is good and dark is bad. But
Yeah, right.
this set of teachings that are all about the light and the guides and the deities that are associated with the light, like even Jesus and Mother Mary
Mhm.
and Mary Magdalene, but it doesn't actually bring you closer to any type of truth or any type of authentic spiritual path. It pulls you away from it. So it's like if we have, for example, we've talked about all the spirits, right? We've talked about vampiric spirits and their glamour. And they will put this glamour coating onto things or in your third eye. And it means you can't see the truth. But because it's light and because
Mhm.
it's glittery, we assume that it's good and it must be correct.
Yeah.
Whereas actually just this illusion that is leading us slowly, slowly further away from the truth.
It's like the
This,
mirage, the mirage in
yeah.
the desert where it's like, oh, all of a sudden this body of water appears, but you get there and it's like, oh shit,
Hmm.
there's nothing here. It just dissolved
Right.
completely.
And like trickster energies can
Yeah.
impersonate guides. And so you think you're working with an angel or even Jesus, and
Mhm.
you're not. And it's this trickster energy that appears as a light being and just
Mhm.
kind of slowly, one breadcrumb at a time, leads you away
Mhm.
from, I don't know, whatever
Okay.
the goal is, and your spiritual truth and all these things.
So Google actually says false light refers to deceptive illusions or misleading
Hmm.
truths that appear spiritual or enlightened, but actually lead away from true understanding or wholeness. And this is especially relevant to the spiritual path that relies on external gurus or worship and bypasses necessary emotional work or promotes a
Hmm.
sense of too good to be true.
That's what I was going to say. There's this like too, like it's too good. There, it's too
Mhm.
easy. It's too, you want to do it because it's like, oh, that sounds perfect. That sounds like exactly what I need,
Yeah.
right? Because of course, again, of course, it's easier,
Yeah.
and we would all prefer for that to be the truth
Yeah.
than
And I think too,
to
it's
do the real
like
work.
it promotes that like external authority, right?
Yeah.
Where it displaces one's responsibility. And in a way, that's kind of
Hmm.
like that feels comfy, right? Because we don't want to take responsibility for our own shit. And so we're gonna pedestalize somebody else
Hmm.
and outsource our inner our sense of authority and agency to
Yeah.
this person. When again, that's also this illusion where we're not really
Hmm.
assuming responsibility, we're
Yeah.
offloading that to somebody else, and it's not true. It's not the truth.
It's this dressed up version, right? So it's like, I'm going to teach you how to be your own spiritual authority.
Oh yeah.
But the teachings are it's that cultish, like
Mm-hmm.
almost brainwashing. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it like there are plenty of
One thousand
actual
percent.
cults in the spiritual spaces that do use things like, I'm thinking of like the Twin Flame universe. That's a fun documentary if
Oh
anyone wants to
yeah.
watch it. Um, but within the Twin Flame universe, they are the only people who can tell you who your twin flame is. They're the only people who can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you
Mm-hmm.
need them. And in some ways, it's much easier because if you can just, Alexandra, if you can just tell me who my twin flame is
Mm-hmm.
and how to have that relationship, I don't have to date anymore. I don't have to do the apps. I don't have to get hurt anymore. Like, I'll just know who my soulmate is. I don't even use the word soulmate, it's twin flame. And then everything will be good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But often, yeah, there's often this kind of deceptive, culty brainwashing techniques, because all the cults use the same set of psychology principles
Yeah. Yeah.
to get people sucked into cults. And it makes you feel like you're on a path to your own spiritual authority, to your own enlightenment, when in fact you're accidentally being wound deeper into their paradigm that will somehow rely on
Mm-hmm.
them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very much about distortion, distorting reality,
Yes.
distorting. It's that not all that glitters is gold.
I actually really want to use that song for some content on Instagram.
Really?
Yeah. Because I think it applies directly to shadow work and this topic.
Yeah.
Not,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to find the gold, you often have to go into the shadow,
Mm-hmm.
into the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not just gonna, it is unlikely that an angel is just going to blow the trumpet and hand you enlightenment
Mm.
on a
Or the
silver
rapture.
platter.
Yeah. Which is why a lot of like the false light and love, or love and light community, and the new age movement is really like regurgitated Christianity. You see a lot
It
of like,
it
oh,
really, really is.
we're God's chosen people. Oh, there's this savior here. Oh, there's this we're ascending, like we're going to be raptured. Like there's a lot of parallels there. And I think what's also really interesting is the glyph for Pisces is a fish, right? And
Mhm.
what's the glyph for Jesus and
Right.
his cult? It's not a coincidence.
Yeah, that's a good point. I
Mm-hmm.
think that Christianity, not all of it, but a lot of it is a good example of this. Like we're seeing Christian nationalists in this country right now, right? There are,
Yeah.
in the name of God,
Mm-hmm.
restricting food
Mm-hmm.
and healthcare. And I think that it's fairly clear to anyone who's even spent a second in the Bible to know that there are lots and lots and lots of teachings about feeding the hungry and caring for
Mm-hmm.
the poor.
Mm-hmm.
But they're wrapped up in this false set of teachings. And
Right.
behind that, so this is where there's that, as above, so below, right? As this universal principle that these same teachers love to spout and then say there's nothing bad on the other side of the veil. The universe is all good.
Mm-hmm.
If everything is truly as above, so below, then if there is evil in this realm, there is evil on the other side of the veil.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't have it both ways. And that's where it's like, these Christian nationalists, you will not convince me for a second, are worshiping a real God. They are worshiping, in my opinion, the demiurge. We'll do like a whole podcast episode on that concept separately, but they're not actually talking to the real Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking to
Surprise.
something else. And the same thing happens with a lot of these love and light teachers is they think they're talking to whichever benevolent guide or energy, like even that they think they're talking to, that they think they're
Mm-hmm.
channeling. But in part because of the spirit manipulation and the vampires and all these things, they're not talking to who they think they're talking to,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no discernment. There's no ancestral traditions, or again, roots into ancestral practices, into land, into anything, because we've all been severed from that as white people.
Mm-hmm.
And without the roots, you just ascend into whatever looks like light. In case you haven't heard already, I wanted to take a moment and let you know about a free masterclass that I will be holding with Azriel Loom, the Priestess Path. This will be a 90-minute masterclass where we're going to talk about what it means to be a priestess, how to get started, how to know if it's for you, and doing guided journey work on the same topic. As you're listening to this episode, you're probably seeing that Neptune and Aries really is going to be bringing down all the veils on all of the illusion in the spiritual communities. And one of the biggest problems we're seeing with priestesses is that everyone wants to claim the title, but not everyone wants to take on the responsibility that comes with the title. So if the word priestess has been calling to you and you want to learn more, grab your seat. We're live on December 4th at 1 o'clock p.m. Central Time, but the recording will be available in the future as well. So even if you're listening to this in the future, you can still go grab the recording for free. There's this false guru culture, right? Where we're pedestalizing all these teachers. And the flip side of that is I don't need a mentor. I don't need a guide. I don't need a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Because my link to the divine is direct and my own, which is true. And also sometimes we do need mentors and teachers and people who are going to hold us accountable
Elders.
and people who are exactly. There is no tradition on the planet where you would have just only self-taught your way into being a shaman or a medicine woman or a priestess
Mm-hmm.
or you would have at the very least mentored with the other shaman in your village until you took
Mm-hmm.
over.
Mm-hmm.
It's to me there's always this duality of like
Oh,
of
that's
us
a good
learning
word
to
for.
hold the duality better, right? Like we can have
Yeah.
teachers when we need them. We don't have to say the options aren't pedestalizing our teachers or not having teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't the
Mm-hmm.
only two options. Or it's like spiritual practitioners being paid. The options
Oh,
aren't unethical spiritual practitioner who rips people off or ethical spiritual practitioner who doesn't charge anything. Those aren't the
right.
two options. Ethical practitioners need to make money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's also that like binary framework
Mm-hmm.
that we've been passed down. You know, it's the binary
Yeah.
framework of like, oh, this is black, this is white, this is evil, this is good, this is, you know, it's always like one extreme or the other. And we
Mm-hmm.
rarely give attention to the large nuance and gray area
Exactly.
in life. Yeah.
Yeah. So Neptune's moving into Aries soon. Do we have tips or advice for people?
That's hard. Because that also, I mean, that would go into more individual stuff, but
That's
I
true. Yeah.
think listening to the podcast is a tip. Because we talk about this so much.
We do.
So
We
it's
talk
so
about it a lot.
essentially like really it's being on the lookout for these kinds of red flags, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the green flags too, because there
Yeah.
certainly are green flags, but you know, it's really taking the time to be discerning. and
Mm-hmm.
and also with Neptune and Aries, this is a lot about like a lot of spiritual insights are going to happen, you know, when we're able to discern our own energy, when we're able to discern our own individuality, you know,
Yeah.
what belongs to us and what doesn't. It's part of that individuation, right? um and so, you know, being able to sit with yourself, with whatever's coming up for you, enough so that you know what belongs to you and what doesn't belong to you. Discernment is going to be huge. Discernment is going to be key. And how can you discern when you don't spend enough time knowing your body, knowing what it's telling you, knowing the sensations that are coming up when
Mm-hmm.
perhaps, you know, you're pedestalizing a thing or you're experiencing some sort of idealization about a thing because it's too painful to sit in the reality of things.
Mm-hmm.
So really it's going to be very self-reflective. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be it'll have a lot to do with like truth telling is the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
um Let me
So that's where
see.
it's like when it comes to truth telling, right? Like as a spiritual practitioner, and I was just talking about this with somebody else. Is like this the truth isn't always comfortable. In fact,
Mhm.
rarely
Rarely
is
is.
it comfortable. And
Yeah.
so that's where it's really important to learn how your body, like you were just saying, like what happens in your body and how do you
Mhm.
sit with it? Because sometimes your body feels uncomfortable. It feels like you're
Mhm.
having, like a nervous system activation, you're triggered, whatever, because somebody said something harmful.
Yeah. Mhm.
And sometimes it's happening because somebody pointed out your internal colonization and that's uncomfortable for you.
Yeah, so it's also like kind of like being able to differentiate between this
Mm-hmm.
illusion and this intuition.
Right.
And they tend to be, you know, they tend
Mm-hmm.
to be a little sneaky sometimes when you haven't sat with yourself enough. But it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely there's going to be a lot of emphasis on self-reflection and self-assertion. You
Mm-hmm.
know, your own agency? What is your body telling you? Because this is
Right.
also the sign of incarnation. This is like,
Mm, mhm.
what is my flesh telling? What is my carnal like suit telling me? How is that communicating? Aries is the breath of life. It's
Mhm.
like that incarnation, and then the embodiment, the actual being in the body, the groundedness. You could leave that up to the earth signs for sure.
Yeah.
Capricorn,
Well, I mean,
Taurus,
the
Virgo.
Emperor in the tarot, he's only like the 4th, I mean, 5th card when you include
Yeah,
the
the Fool.
Fool, but he's only number 4.
Mhm.
Like, he's
Mhm.
early
Yeah.
in, if we're looking at that as the entire journey, right?
Mhm.
Fool to the
Mhm.
world. Um, he's pretty early.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, um
And it's making me think
s-
about how, like, um the wands and the fire in the tarot are
oh,
about
yeah.
spirit,
Mhm.
especially the ace.
Mm.
It's about connecting with that, like, spirit, or,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. Because if the cups are about your intuition, this is about that
Mhm.
actual spark of
Yeah.
sorts and connecting
Mhm.
with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of like the spark, Neptune in Aries really is going to demand momentum here. One thing
Mhm.
that comes up a lot is like, you shall know them by the fruits of their labors. Action
Mhm.
is going to trump any words people are going to be speaking to you. Look at their
Mhm.
actions. Like, this is a sign of receipts.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know there's no hesitation to confront here. So like, the truth will be in the actions. People are going to show
Mhm.
you who they are, and you're going to have to believe them.
Yeah.
And
The sign of
and
receipts.
that's that's really
I
it.
like it. I like it.
Yeah,
Sign
it's
of
like, because it's
receipts.
the sign of action, it's the sign of momentum. So it's like, okay,
Mhm.
this is like the actual embodiment piece. This is the action. So you can tell
Mhm.
me all the things that you want to tell me. You can tell me all the things that you are, but
Yeah.
I'm going to know by your actions, because
Yeah.
that is Aries energy. It's like, nope,
Yeah.
we're acting. We're
That makes
acting.
sense. Mhm.
Um So certainly, I think when it comes to, when you're picking out spiritual mentors, uh or even in like the somatics field too, or really anything at this
Oh,
point
yeah,
in
'cause I would say
time,
this applies to
to all the
therapists
things.
and
Yeah.
coaches and yeah.
Yeah. Look at the reality. Look at their
Mhm.
actions. Are they aligned with their values, what they say that they're valuing? Are they aligned
Mhm.
um with what they're teaching? I think it's quite hypocritical, and kind of, and I'm going to risk sounding like a major bitch here, but um all these like coaches that show spiritual practitioners, how to reach these like 10K months and 20K months, et cetera, et cetera, while
Mhm.
it's completely possible. I think it's kind of shitty, and it's lacking in integrity when you're going to flex the income that you're bringing in on a monthly basis, right? And you're going to use that as the authority. And yet, I don't see any
Yeah.
donation receipts.
See, that's the thing, is, like, when we talk about money in the spiritual spaces, like, I believe strongly that spiritual practitioners need to be paid well.
Mhm.
Now, in history, our practitioners, our healers they would have been taken care of in one way or another by their communities or in their temples or something like that. That's not where we are today. That's not how society functions today, right? I have to make money in order to live. And I think that really good practitioners are worth it. They should be paid well.
Mhm.
And there's also this, then once it's overflowing for them,
Mhm.
because that's what I would like to see happen. I would like to see
Yeah.
ethical practitioners bring in resources to the point of overflow.
Mhm.
Then what?
Yeah.
Do we raise prices again because we can?
Mhm.
Are we donate, or are we donating money and offering scholarships? And, like, where's the,
Mhm.
the reciprocity and the taking,
Yes.
but
Mhm.
this is the, and we'll do a whole other money episode because I actually have a lot to say about this. Um,
Mhm.
but money, I know everybody calls it earth and like the suit of pentacles. Healthy, healthy money flows like water.
Yeah.
And
I
so
mean,
when
even listen, all of our terminology around money,
exactly.
liquidation,
Hmm.
all these terms, currency, like it's water, right? And really
Right.
it's ruled by water. Um,
But this is the same standard that I would hold pretty much any professional to. Once you
yeah.
are at a point of overflow, I think that that's beautiful. I think that you should invest for yourself. You should invest for your family. You should take some of that overflow and go on vacation.
Mhm.
And
And also,
what are we doing to help people with the overflow? Because we want to be ideally, and this is very matriarchal, we want
mhm.
to be helping people from overflow, not from a place of self deprivation and
Right.
um, self sacrifice and things. We want to
Mhm.
be helping people from a place of overflow.
Mhm.
So I'd love to see everybody hit that point. And then the question is, then what?
Mhm.
Then what?
Mhm.
So like huge parts of my motivation whenever I sit down to like do my money work and my money blocks and like, is like if I could get my family to this to a specific level where we have this certain level of stability and abundance,
Mhm.
my literal thing is like I want to make more than that so I can overpour, so that I can like
Yeah.
help take care of people and create infrastructure and systems. And
Mhm.
this is like actually a huge piece of my motivation.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, to circulate that money where it needs to be circulated.
exactly.
Yeah.
We'll do a money episode. Maybe we'll even do that one next because there's a lot to say about
About money.
money in
Yeah.
this society, in this late stage capitalistic hellscape that we live in. So, all right. Well, anything else we want to say about this? I think go listen to the Love and Light episode. Go listen to the one about vampiric spirits. I think that's
Mhm.
important for fleshing out this conversation.
Yeah.
But anything else you have to say? I think
Yeah,
we're
I feel
not.
like every conversation that we have is kind of just like it's so intersectional. Like
Yeah.
everything intersects. And so we've probably
Hmm.
already talked about a little piece of it in different episodes
Hmm.
and so yeah, that's always more supportive.
Yeah.
Um
Because if our whole goal here is to reclaim the sacred feminine, we are trying to reclaim her in her fullness, not in that illusion,
mhm.
one dimensional version that a
Mhm.
lot of love and light spaces give us.
Mhm.
And I'm betting those are a lot of the veils we're going to see fall.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of what's going to start to rip. Again, we're entering this like spiritual realism
Hmm.
era and it's going to be a rude awakening, but it's a necessary one.
Hmm.
Uh especially in today's political climate,
Hmm.
especially today. So,
Yeah.
I'm excited for it personally.
Me too.
Mhm.
Me too. I'm usually not excited about the volatile
Mhm.
transits, even though I understand the necessity of them.
Mhm.
But this one I'm a little more excited about.
Yeah, and of course, like right, like this is there's going to be stuff that's going to feel uncomfy too, Mars
Yeah.
or Aries is the sign of war, it's ruled by Mars, the god of war. And so are we going to
Hmm.
see a lot of spiritual warfare, a lot of manipulation still? Yeah, we're still going to see that. It's going to be a struggle for sure. But it's meant to like it has to get to that point for people to wake up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I think we're going to see a lot of veils dropping about what spiritual warfare actually is and
Yeah,
actually looks like, which we've talked about a few episodes now. We didn't use that term, but
right.
um and then who the sacred feminine really is,
Mhm.
because she's not as everybody listening to this knows, she's not just about love and creation, and well, she is all about love, but love doesn't
Yeah.
always look soft.
Mm,
It's not always soft. It's not always
sometimes
pretty.
you gotta go to war for love. You
Mhm.
gotta go to war for the children. You gotta, like, um,
Mhm.
I have a lot of thoughts about that, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Sometimes love plays out in very violent ways.
Maybe we should do a goddess of love and war episode.
Yeah, we should, shouldn't we? I think,
Yeah.
yeah, we should. That would be, yeah. The rage in me honors the rage in you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go. I'm starving because it's lunchtime, past lunchtime for me.
Yeah,
And
past.
we will talk to you guys in the next episode, which might be about money or it might be about war. We'll see. We'll see. Bye.